This is a Louie T Network exclusive.
Hey, either you're outside or you're
in the lab room.
Draft Zone.
Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome. You are in the lab room, of course. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me on the 2016 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man, Louie T, aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2016 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale: single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series. As you can tell how these players are going to pan out, don't want to discount any of these players before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll grade each and every single player, give them a grade, get an aggregate score by adding up each and every single player's grade together, divide by the number of picks, and voila, you get an overall score for that team's draft. Move on to the next team in the process, picked by you. That's right, you, the viewers out there, are going to be the ones to make the selection of the next team in this series by simply being the first, not the second, not the third, not the 33rd, but the first to leave a comment at the bottom of this and future videos stating the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. I don't care how you phrase it, as long as those two components are in the comment and you're first, that team will be up next in the process. So without any further ado, let's get to the next team up in the series picked by you, the viewers, the Green Bay Packers. Go, Pack, go! Go, Pack, go! So we talking Green Bay Packers 2016 NFL Draft. And you know Ted Thompson and company, they know how to do it, and they know how to do it right up in Green Bay. And so let's break down the 2016 NFL Draft of the Green Bay Packers, starting with their first round selection. 27th overall pick, UCLA defensive lineman Kenny Clark is the selection. And this was a pick that I had to warm up to it. It was funny because as we watched the draft together, remember I did the draft party live on my channel, and I was talking to a number of Green Bay Packers fans, and I think the pick and the anticipation of the pick had reached a fever pitch, and we were expecting a number of players at the time. You know, Packers fans were screaming for an Alabama linebacker. They were screaming for Butler. They were screaming for a number of different players that were still on the board at the time of the selection, and it ended up being Kenny Clark, and I was surprised just like they were. And I can tell you this much: at the initial pick, I was not happy about this selection for the Green Bay Packers. I didn't think that Kenny Clark was a guy that really moved the needle for me, and so I went into this process thinking he was going to be at best a triple. But when I put the tape on and I studied him, the more tape I watched, the more he grew on me, and the more I saw his value. Let's break him down. 6'3", 314-pound defensive tackle. Great movement skills for a 314-pound man, and so that's the first pro. This guy has really good movement skills, can get up and down the line, get in the backfield, can be disruptive. Not as disruptive as I would like him to be, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but this guy has a lot of things that he brings to the table, and one of them is really good movement skills for a guy that's 315 pounds. Plays with awesome leverage, and to me, that is probably his best attribute at this present time, is his leverage. He gets down in this frog-like stance. If you watch him before the snap, he's really low down, and as the snap takes place, he kind of gets up just ever so slightly, but he keeps that low center of gravity and that low base. So when he comes up out of his stance, he's underneath that offensive lineman. It gives him great leverage, allows him to use something that I will talk about here in a second that is a really big weapon for him. His probably best weapon of choice. We'll talk about that. As a matter of fact, that's the next pro. His bull rush is out of this world. When he wants to, he can be a disruptive force. He can be a guy that can dump truck a center or guard and take him into the backfield 2, 3, 4 yards at a time and be very, very disruptive on any given play. But I want to see more of that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I'll tell you this much: that leverage, that bull rush, and the combination of the two makes this guy a very dangerous football player, potentially at the next level. Start at the point of attack. I just talked about him using great leverage. That leverage allows him to stand up at the point of attack with offensive linemen, and that's something that it doesn't really matter whether he's tired or not. That's the one thing you're going to get out of Kenny Clark is him being stopped at the point of attack. You're not going to move this guy very often, and so whether he's tired or not, you're going to get that at least out of him is he's going to stand up at the point of attack. Stacks and sheds, he does this really well, and I want to add this next pro in here together because they go hand in hand to me, is he stacks and sheds well, but he also has that vaunted paw of doom, which a lot of these guys I've seen in this draft class don't have. They don't possess that paw of doom. Stick that arm out there, even though you're engaged with an offensive lineman. Stick that arm out there, latch on to that running back or whomever has the football, quarterback, doesn't matter. Grab them with that one arm, wrap them up, and whether you go for a ride for a yard or two or you stop them dead in their tracks, at least you're impacting the play. Stick that arm out there, see what happens. And so he's the guy with the paw of doom. Will stick that arm out there, latch onto a running back, latch onto a quarterback, and get him down on the ground. And once he gets his hands on you, one thing I can say about Kenny Clark, strong hands. He gets his hands on you, you're going down on the ground, whether he's got to keep a grip of your jersey and swing you around and get you on the ground, or he uses that one hand grip to pull you close to him, so then get two hands on you and then get you down on the ground. He's going to find a way to get you on the ground once he gets his paws and mitts on you. He tackles well, and that kind of speaks to that paw of doom a little bit. When a guy can stick one arm out there and that can be enough to get you down on the ground, usually that's a sign that this guy can tackle very well. And he's one of those guys, if he gets in the backfield and he's in pursuit and he dives down at your legs, that guy's going down. He does a really good job of when he gets to a ball carrier, he usually gets them onto the ground. Takes on double teams, and I talked about him being stopped at the point of attack and saying that it doesn't really matter whether he's fully energized or he's dead tired. You're not really going to move this guy. And taking on double teams is something that you're going to get out of Kenny Clark, and he saw a lot of double teams at UCLA and really at UCLA. There wasn't a lot of help for him along that defensive line. As a matter of fact, they had a really porous run defense. Watching him on tape, that team was getting gashed repeatedly on the ground, giving up copious amounts of yards, whether it was Arizona or with Stanford. You put on just about any tape and these guys were giving it up on the ground, but Kenny Clark was not the reason they were giving it up on the ground, that is to be sure. A lot of times he was taking on double teams and standing up and holding his own, and guys just weren't making plays behind him. But yeah, make no mistake about it, Kenny Clark did his job on most nights, and he just didn't get a lot of help, including standing up to double teams very effectively. Can generate some pressure on the quarterback. Now, he's not a guy that's going to overwhelm you with his numbers getting to the quarterback, but I saw some moves, a quick swim move, a little bit of a rip, and of course that bull rush that I talked about earlier. These are all ways that he can get to the quarterback. I'd love to see him get better at that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but he can generate some pressure, and I'm hoping that's something that he improves upon at the next level and adds that to his game and makes him that much stronger of a football player at the next level. We'll see, but he can generate a little bit of pressure on the quarterback. Awareness. And my favorite play, one of my favorite plays from Kenny Clark was against Stanford. He's going up the field, rushing the quarterback. He realizes it's screen at the last minute. He sees the running back, McCaffrey, running by him, and so he grabs on to Christian McCaffrey. Now, really, this is a flag, okay? Holding, pass interference. I think it's really holding when it's in the backfield like it was, but he latches on to Christian McCaffrey, grabs him, and literally pulls him to him, and he still catches the ball. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is an outstanding athlete. Still catches the football with Kenny Clark draped all over him, but what he did effectively was he blew up that screen that had big play written all over it if he did not impede that play. And so he's going up the field, he's screaming up the field, and then he realizes, damn, that was too easy. He sees Christian McCaffrey running right by him. He's like, oh, no, you don't. Grabs onto him, turns around, pulls him into him, and even though Christian McCaffrey catches the football, he only gets about a yard on the play because Kenny Clark is literally on his back as he catches the football. No flag was thrown, so he got away with it. That's awareness, folks. That's what you have to have as a defensive lineman, and that's how you impact plays. And to me, that was one of my favorite plays watching Kenny Clark, was seeing him be aware enough to know, okay, this is screen, read it, and do something about it. And he ended up saving a big play from taking place in a game where Christian McCaffrey ran all over these guys and set a Stanford school record for most rushing yards in a game. So he limited the damage as much as he could on that one particular play. Go to his cons. This is my biggest gripe with Kenny Clark, and this was the reason why I wasn't high on him at first. But again, watching more and more tape, he grew on me, and I saw the value in Kenny Clark. But this is the thing that drives me nuts with him. I want him to be more impactful. And again, he wasn't on a very good UCLA defense. They gave it up, especially on the ground. But I think there are things that he can do to become a much more impactful football player. Fight through some blocks a little bit more. I think this guy's strong enough. This guy's physical enough. This guy's a good enough athlete to be more of a problem defensively. Get into the backfield more. I think it doesn't have to necessarily be on the bull rush, but he can win in different ways with the rip, with the swim. He's quick enough. He's agile enough. There are different things that he can do, and I know he's talented enough to do it because I've seen him do it, but I don't see it consistently enough. I want to see this guy impact the game more because I think he can do more. We talk about Robert Kimdiche and him needing to do more and him needing to show up more. I think the same can be said for Kenny Clark. Do more because you can do more, and I want to see him do more. I want to see him deflect some more passes. Hell, you're pushing that center or that guard 2 yards into the backfield. Get your arms up. Deflect some footballs. Be more impactful. Do more things to impact the football game, down and distance, or getting your team off the field with just a deflection. Sometimes the little things are the things that help the most, and I want to see him do more of those things on the football field. And the last con is something you could probably say about 90% of 300-plus pounders in the National Football League on the defensive side of football in the trenches. Useless when tired. When he's tired, all he's going to do is lean on offensive linemen. You're not going to get much out of Kenny Clark when he's very tired. But, I mean, if you're talking about a guy that can do so many things on a football field, I just want to see more. I think he can do more. I think he can be better than what I've seen on tape from him. And not to say that he wasn't good at UCLA, because he was, but I think he can do more. But I see a lot of what the Packers saw in him and what they think he's going to become at the next level. So in the first round, 27th pick out of UCLA, defensive lineman Kenny Clark for me is hit hard. He's hit deep. Out of here. It's a home run in the first round. I really had to watch some tape because this was a triple all the way up until the very last moment. And I said, yeah, this guy, I see what they see. I watched him closely in the trenches and watch what he was doing and how he impacted plays. This guy's a home run, and I think if they can get him to take that next step, I think he can get better, and I think he can be better, and I think there's another level that he can take his game to. If they can get that out of him, they may have themselves a hell of a football player in the first round, and Kenny Clark can go to the second round. 48th overall selection. Offensive tackle out of Indiana, Jason Spriggs is the pick. Remember, the Packers traded up to get this selection, to make this pick. So this is a guy that they definitely coveted in the second round in Jason Spriggs. Let's talk about him. 6'6", 301-pound offensive tackle out of Indiana. Long, athletic offensive lineman. Gifted athlete is the first pro, 4'9", 440. To me, he was one of the most gifted athletes from an offensive line perspective at the combine. Sands for Laramie Tunzel. I thought this guy was phenomenal, and Laramie Tunzel didn't run the 40. Well, Jason Spriggs did, and he ran a sub 540, and he looked good, and he was spry, and I thought he was one of the most impressive offensive linemen at the combine. So I was already blown away, and I had already watched him in college, so I already knew what kind of football player Jason Spriggs was, but all I did was put on the tape, and all he did was re-emphasize what I had already known about him, which was this guy's a hell of a football player. So great length. At 6'6", you already know that usually comes equipped with long limbs, long legs, long arms, 34-inch arms. This guy's got limbs for arms, tree branches, and so that's another strong pro for him. As you go on and look at some of the things he brings to the table, I talked about him being a great athlete. Here are all the things that comes with him being a great athlete. Gets to the second level with urgency, and that's something that I love in offensive linemen. And I'll go ahead and lump this next pro in there because this is something that a lot of guys can't do, especially at the collegiate level. And this is, to me, one of the hardest blocks to execute in all of football. It doesn't matter what level you're at. This is one of the hardest blocks. That and the sift block that tight ends do. It's a pretty tough block, but the reach block is so tough because these defensive linemen each and every single year get more and more athletic, and they're knifing into the backfield. And as a tackle on the backside of a play. You got to get to that defensive lineman who is coming downhill at an alarming rate. And you got to find a way to not only get in front of him, and they just outlawed the cut block. So now there's no more chop blocks on the side of that offensive lineman. You just get your head around the front. There's no more of those. So now all of a sudden you got to find a way to bust your ass to get in front of that lineman, get your helmet in front of him, and stop him and cut off that backside pursuit of that lineman. Good luck with that. Well, he's one of those guys in this draft that can get to that reach block. Now, again, if it's a special athlete at defensive line, it's going to be hard for you to get to that reach block. Like Adolphus Washington, he couldn't get to that reach block. Okay, but Adolphus Washington is a special 300-pounder. Not a lot of Adolphus Washingtons and those types of athletes running around. So he can get to that reach block. I saw him get to it a number of times, enough times for me to feel comfortable saying that he can get to that reach block consistently. So he gets to the second level with urgency. He can get to that reach block. I think he does a really great job on double teams. These are all things that you like to see with an offensive lineman when you're talking about the run game, getting to that reach block, getting to that second level with urgency, and getting those double teams that allow you to get to that second level. If you go ahead and you double team with that guard, you seal that off, and then you get to the second level and get that kick out block on that linebacker, guess what? Eddie Lacy has now been sprung for a 37-yard run instead of a 4-yard run because you were able to get to that double team and then get to that second level and kick out that block on that linebacker or that safety and open up a gaping hole and get Eddie Lacy to the second and even the third level. So those are all things that I absolutely love with Jason Spriggs. He wins at the point of attack in the run game to me. He does a really good job of creating space, sealing and walling off defenders. I mean, you saw Jordan Howard and how good he was in the Big Ten, and he was putting up a $150, it seemed like, every single week when he was healthy, and even in some games when he wasn't, when he was on one ankle. A lot of those runs were off to the left side, off of Jason Spriggs, who was doing some serious work out on the edge. And so that's a guy that I think you can trust at the next level to not only help you in the run game, but even excel in the run game. Mirrors well. I told you this guy's an athlete, and you saw it at the combine, him mirroring well here. He's going here and he's following the guy that's in front of him, running back and forth like a little jackrabbit. Well, he does a good job of mirroring. He doesn't have a problem with speed rushers. Everybody will tell you this guy handles the speed rushers very well. It's the power that gives him problems, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but he mirrors very well for me. I love it. I think this guy had all the potential in the world to be a first-round pick. Reliable. And I think this is the one thing that the Packers fans and the Packer organization probably looked at and said, this is the thing that we like about him, probably more so than anything else. This guy played in 47 of 48 games in college, started 47 of 48 possible games. So that's reliability there, a guy that's going to lace him up and step out on the football field just about each and every single week. And one of the biggest problems the Packers have had over the last 3 years or so with their offensive linemen is they just haven't been available. A lot of musical chairs, a lot of shuffling guys around to try to fill vacancies and voids left by guys who are injured. You're getting a guy in Jason Spriggs who plays through injuries, who's very tough, who's a guy that's going to be healthy and be on the field and be available, which is something the Packers have lacked along that offensive line for the last few years in front of Aaron Rodgers. So you go to his cons. He will overextend. That's the first con. And he's a guy that sometimes he'll get on the balls of his feet, he'll get on his toes, and he'll hit here and he'll get that punch out there, and he'll be leaning a little bit. And if you're leaning and that lineman gets even, you're done. And so he's got to be aware. And this is not only in the passing game, in pass pro, but this is also out in the run game where I'll see him overextend, get out there, get anxious, overextend, and then that lineman will push him out of the way and he'll be able to get to the ball carrier. So that's something he's going to have to clean up, is to be a little more reserved in that and not be over anxious and not overextend and get his weight out over his feet too far where he's going to be exposed and vulnerable to guys getting him out of the way. He can stand to get a little stronger, and this is the thing that everybody's talking about. Mike Mayock swears that this guy isn't strong enough. He's got to be able to put his foot down and anchor a little bit better and stop guys from getting to the inside, and you got to be able to stop guys from bull rushing them. I didn't see a lot of that on tape. Maybe I didn't watch the same game or games that he watched, but all of the tapes that I watched, all of the different games that I watched, I saw a guy handling business, okay? There are a couple of times Joey Bosa got him on a spin move one time. There were a couple of times where he got beat, but I mean, any tackle can be beaten on any given play, but it wasn't consistently. He wasn't getting beaten consistently, and it wasn't one thing that was giving him trouble. It wasn't a consistent bull rush giving him fits, or it wasn't a quick move from the outside back to the inside, an up and under move or anything like that. It was just a really good move put on by a really good guy that went in the top 3 of the draft. It happened. So I didn't see a lot there that made me wonder, is this guy going to be able to stand up to NFL caliber players, because he took care of business at Indiana. And the last con is he needs to sustain in pass pro a little bit better. Now, that's the one thing that I didn't like, and that was consistent, was he would have a guy locked up, and then, you know, the quarterback might hang on to the football a little bit longer than he needed to. And you got to be able to sustain that block and not allow a guy to have a second or third effort and allow him to get the sack. And so that's something I'd like to see him do, is just maintain that block a little bit longer. You never know what your quarterback's doing up there. You know, you're blind and oblivious to what's going on with the quarterback. All you can do is just take care of business. And so I'd like to see him do a better job of just sustaining that block a little bit longer when in pass pro. But in the second round, 48th overall selection, the Packers came up to get Jason Spriggs, and I think it was a pick well spent. In the second round, 48th overall selection, Jason Spriggs for me is hit hard. It's hit deep. You can put it on the board. Yes, it's a home run for the Packers. Back-to-back jacks for the Green Bay Packers in the first 2 rounds, with their tackle Jason Spriggs in the second round, which was followed and preceded by Kenny Clark, defensive lineman, in the first round. So Packers doing some work in the trenches on both sides of the football to begin their draft. We go to the third round, 88th overall selection, linebacker out of Utah State, Kyler Fackrell is the selection. Here's a guy that I really enjoyed watching the tape on, and had no idea what those boys were doing out at Utah State, but they had 2 of them go off the board in the first 4 rounds, if I'm not mistaken. So they had one of the better linebacking cores in all of the National Football League, and Kyler Fackrell was one of the reasons why. Let's talk about him. 6'5", 245-pound linebacker, and I love that size. I mean, that's a really good size. And looking at the league now, and all of these guys that are 227 pounds, 231 pounds, it's refreshing to see a guy 6'5", 245 step into the league. That's a grown man body already, and he may come into the league and gain another 5 to 7 pounds. So, I mean, that's a really good size. He's a good athlete at that size as well. 4'7", 240, and he, to me, on game day, looks like he's running a little faster than that. There's an explosion, and there's a shock in his hands. A little bit of violence in his hands, too. So there's a lot of things that I like about Kyler Fackrell. Long limbs, and I talked about 6'5", and again, just like I talked about with Jason Spriggs, when you get a guy that's north of 6'2", usually those arms start to get longer and longer as the inches go up and up. Those arms get longer and longer and extend, and he's got some long limbs, and they help him do some damage on the football field. Speaking of which, he stopped the point of attack, and he stacks and sheds. To me, he's one of the best stacking and shedding linebackers in this draft. I mean, when you watch him, and I talked about the shock and awe and violence in his hands, that's when you see it. When he grabs a guy, an offensive lineman, a fullback, or a tight end, when he grabs a guy and that ball carrier comes and he just tosses him out of the way and goes and grabs him. His favorite move, and he's an outstanding tackler, that's the next pro. His favorite move is to take an offensive lineman or whomever is blocking and toss him out of the way, grab the ball carrier by the waist. It's a perfect form tackle. Grab him and swing him around like Zangief and throw him on the ground. And I'm like, that is vicious. He's a guy that is very aggressive, very good tackler. Usually when he gets his hands on a guy, they're hitting the ground. So there's a lot here with Kyle Fackrell that just blew me away watching, because again, I had not been exposed to any of these Utah State linebackers, and to see what they were out there doing, pretty impressive if you ask me. Backside contain and pursuit is absolutely off the charts. He's a guy that is very patient on that backside. Those bootlegs and all of those things, that play action, they don't get him on the backside. He's staying at home. But when he's supposed to take off down the line and come with that backside pursuit. If you don't block him, and we know there are a lot of blocking schemes that ignore that guy on the backside of a play because they don't think he's fast enough or athletic enough to get there. Kyler Fackrell is one of those guys that will come from the backside of a play and hawk that running back down and make a play for no gain or 1 yard gain on a play. So his backside contain and pursuit to me is phenomenal, and he does a really good job of staying at home when he's supposed to, but when he needs to come down that line like a screaming banshee, he does that well as well. You look at his motor, it's an outstanding motor. It's a great motor. It's always running. You know how I feel about motors. I just want to stick that key in the ignition, turn the switch on, and the car's already ready and hot. I just take off. I don't want to sit there and have to get the thing warmed up and let it kind of catch itself. I just want to go. And his motor, you turn it on and he goes. And he doesn't stop going until the game's over. So love his motor. He can be a pass rusher, and that's one of his pros as well. I think he can rush the passer. I think he can be better at that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But this is a guy that I saw a bevy of moves from him, and I said, hey man, you got something here. It's all scatterbrained right now. There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no program. There's no playbook. He doesn't have any kind of method to his madness. He's just rushing right now. There's no plan, okay, in place. But again, you get with the right coaches. They figure out how to teach this guy and how to coach him up. And I think there are some things here that are untapped right now with Kyler Fackrell, and pass rushing to me is one of them. But I saw the ability for a guy to really, there's some room here for him to grow as a pass rusher, and I really like that with Kyler Fackrell. Drops into coverage, and he's very comfortable in space as the final pro. Here's a guy that was out in space plenty at Utah State. And again, he's a guy that moves around very well in space. I talked about him being a great athlete a little bit earlier on, and you see it when he's out in space. He's not afraid to break down and make a tackle. He's these bubble screens and these hitches out wide. He gets out there in a hurry, and he's the guy that's cleaning it up. So he's really good out in space. And to me, he's comfortable dropping into coverage when necessary. You go to his cons, he needs to refine his pass rushing ability, and I just kind of alluded to that. But to be more specific, I saw this guy use a spin move. I saw him use the explosive speed off the edge. I saw him use the outside back inside, so that up and under move. I saw that. I saw the rip move. They're all there. He's got a tool belt with a bunch of different tools on it. Now he just needs to learn when and how to use them. And so I feel like if he can just figure out a rushing plan, how to set guys up, go up the field with a hard speed rush on the outside 3 or 4 times straight, right? And then turn that into a hard outside back inside rush. Or you go up the field hard, that offensive lineman opens up and gives up that leverage, and then you spin inside. He's just got to come up with a good game plan, a good rushing plan. And once he can figure those things out, I think he can actually be a menace in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. We all know that Clay Matthews needs some help on that defense. A guy like Kyler Fackrell, to me, could be a big assistance to Clay Matthews moving forward. And the biggest con for him, and really it's not a con that you really want to worry about, but in the back of your mind, it's got to be there. 2014 ACL tear. First game of the season versus Tennessee in 2014. Goes down, tears his ACL, misses the entire 2014 season. Comes back, has a fabulous 2015 campaign. And so you feel good about him playing all of last year and getting the job done and not re-injuring himself. But again, towards ACL. So that's just something in the back of your mind you just got to keep in mind. But in the 3rd round, 88th overall selection, linebacker out of Utah State, Kyler Fackrell for me is a triple, man. I enjoyed the tape thoroughly. This guy is a hell of a football player. And I think in this Dom Capers scheme, he's going to be extremely comfortable. Dom is going to move this guy all around, and I can see this guy being a major playmaker for the Packers. In his rookie season, I can see him having an impact day one with his Green Bay Packers defense. You go to the 4th round, 131st pick overall. Stanford linebacker Blake Martinez is the selection. 6'2", 237 pounds. He's a solid athlete, 4'7", a guy that is all around the football field, moving around, doing some things. Flows to the football very well. Those bubble screens out wide, those dragging routes across the middle of the field, those shallow crossers. He's all over all of that stuff. I think he really excels in coverage, and that's the next pro, solid in coverage. And I think the best word that I could come up with to describe him in coverage is reliable. You know where he's going to be. He's where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there. I'll give you a couple of examples. When you see those dragging routes, those crossers across the field, and the quarterback decides to take one of those, you know when that receiver catches the football, Blake Martinez is in heavy pursuit, and after he takes that 1 or 2 steps after catching the football and he looks to turn up the field, he's going to smash into Blake Martinez and he's going down. I mean, that's the kind of reliability you have with Blake Martinez. If a guy catches an underneath route and Blake Martinez is anywhere in that general vicinity, he's going to come up, make a tackle, and get that guy on the ground immediately. Not now, like right now. And so I think he's reliable in coverage. I feel comfortable with this guy being out in space. He's a good run and chase linebacker. I really like what he brings to the table from that run and chase perspective. Wherever he is on the field, he does a really good job of being in pursuit and getting to the football and getting guys on the ground. Speaking of which, he's a tackling machine, 141 tackles, by far the most tackles on that Stanford defense. He was all over the football field. And again, whether he's in coverage or he's coming down and being an enforcer in the run game as a thumper, he's a guy that gets ball carriers on the ground. Non-stop motor. And that's probably the one thing that I would say I enjoyed the most with him is this guy was just running around. I mean, even if he knew he had no intentions of getting to the play in time, he still was hauling ass to the ball carrier. And that guy would be down when he gets there and he just jump on the pile or he just touch somebody. Hey, look, I got all the way over here. I just ran 30 yards. I'm going to touch somebody. I mean, non-stop motor from Blake Martinez. Plays assignment football, and that's another one of these things that you really like with a guy like Blake Martinez is you just see a guy that just is in he's constant motion. He's always going somewhere, but he's never out of control. He's always knowing what he's supposed to be doing on any given play, whether he's in zone coverage or he's in some type of man zone look, or he's coming up and he's being an aggressive blitzer, or he's mugging a gap and looking to stop the run. Whatever the case may be, I talked about him flowing to the football, taking good angles is the last pro. This guy takes efficient pursuit angles to the football. And I just think overall, this guy's a really smart football player. Very smart, instinctive, tough, physical, but also does the little things. And tackling to me is one of those lost arts in the league. And with a guy like Blake Martinez and even Kyler Fackrell, you get guys that are gonna get guys on the football field down on the ground. And to me, the separation between good and above average defenses in this league is tackling is one of the biggest things you will find when you start looking at the defenses in the league and which ones are better than others, which one have a higher percentage on third downs, getting off the football field. All of these things come into play. Tackling to me is one of those categories that we don't really talk about a lot, but the better tackling teams in the league are the ones that are better on third downs, better in points given up, all of those things. They don't allow teams to sustain drives. And Blake Martinez is one of those guys going to tackle a guy as soon as he touches the football, going to hit him. He's not getting extra yardage after contact. And so, to me, efficient pursuit angles, all of that stuff is tied into him doing a really good job of flowing and getting to the football and getting guys on the ground. You go to his cons. He can be over-committal at times. And what I mean by that is he can make his mind up pre-snap. Okay, this is going to be a run. And if that quarterback sticks the football out there and it looks like a run, he's selling out towards the line of scrimmage. Well, it's play action fake. He's already taken 3-4 steps, false steps, up towards the line of scrimmage, attacking the line of scrimmage. Now that tight end is wide open over the middle of the field. So he can be over aggressive. He can be over committal at times. He can be fooled and duped sometimes. So that's something that he'll have to clean up at the next level. And his last con is one that probably saw him drop to the 4th round. He's not explosive at all. As a athlete, he's a guy that just has a non-stop motor, but explosion is not something that Blake Martinez has. And you see it in certain instances where he's got the perfect angle to get a guy down, and these guys just outrun him because he's not explosive enough and not fast enough. Like there's a play with this USC running back coming out of the backfield, and I'm thinking, okay, Blake Martinez took the perfect angle. He's going to meet this guy right at the sideline and bump him out of bounds. And this guy just straight blows by Blake Martinez picks up another 15 yards, and Blake Martinez is still running after him, and he's not gaining any ground. Guy's smoking him. So, and I saw that at least 2 or 3 times where I thought Blake Martinez had a really good angle, and he just got smoked on the play. So, I mean, it can happen to him. And so that's something that I talked about, him taking efficient angles to the football and him being a good run and chase linebacker. Well, he's got to be all of those things. He's got to be aware and instinctive, because if he takes one false step, and that's why that being overcommittal sometimes is a big problem for him. If he takes one false step, he can't afford that. He's not fast enough. So he's a guy that can be blown by. But with that being said, this guy's a big ball of energy. I love watching him play. And in the 4th round, 131st pick overall, Blake Martinez for me is a double. He's a guy that's going to come in, I think, and in nickel packages right away, he's going to be on the football field. It would not surprise me in the least if the Packers staff fall in love with this guy because of just his energy and his constant motor, that this guy finds the field early on in his rookie season and is a contributor in year 1 for this Packers defense. You go to the 4th round, 137th pick overall, Northwestern defensive lineman Dean Lowry is the selection. And in every draft that I do for every team, there's one particular pick that tickles my fancy more so than the others. There's always one guy that I fall in love with his game. His tape is so fun to watch, and it's just enjoyable. And for me, in this Packers draft, it's this pick right here, Dean Lowry for me. Man, was his tape fun. That Nebraska game, I will say this right now, I've never seen a more dominant performance from a 5-tech in a football game than what he put forth versus Nebraska in 2015. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor. Go watch him against Nebraska. It is a performance for the ages. Set a Big Ten record for most tackles for loss in a game, or he set a Northwestern record for most tackles for loss, and he was the 6th most in one game in the Big Ten's history with 6. Had 2 sacks in that game as well. The dude, I think he literally got drafted off of that one tape. I mean, if I'm a general manager and I see that game, I'm like, okay, I want to take this guy. And so I know exactly why Ted Thompson and company spent a 4th round pick on this guy, because he is potentially a huge difference maker along that defensive line. Let's talk about him, 6'6", 296. That is tremendous size. For this type of athlete, 6'6", 296 is ridiculous. Big, long, and strong 5-technique is what this guy is, but you can play him all over the place. If you can play 5-tech, then that means you can kick inside and play 3-tech, and in nickel situations, that's exactly what he did for this Northwestern football team. He's country strong, man. That's the next pro. God damn it, he's like one of these lumberjacks, one of these guys that wakes up, eats cornbread and biscuits, goes and chops trees down and things of that nature. This guy is just ridiculously strong. Flashes of elite quickness is the next pro, and you saw it in that Nebraska game. I watched a number of, because after that game I wanted more. He wet my palate with that Nebraska performance, and so I'm like, I gotta see more of this guy. I gotta find him on tape. And so I put on a couple more games, and I saw a lot more of what I saw in that Nebraska game on a much smaller scale, of course, but still saw the flashes of quickness and him winning to the inside and making plays. So there's a lot here. Saw him against Stanford in the first game. They upset Stanford in week 1 of the college football season. And so this guy, Dean Lowry, he's the truth. And he was getting the job done in every single tape that I watched. And those flashes of quickness, man, tell you what, man, this guy has it. Whatever it is, don't ask me. I don't know what it is. He has it. I know that much. Relentless motor, and to me, when you get a guy with all of the attributes that he has, generally speaking, that's just something that comes innate. You either have it or you don't. He's got that motor that's just nonstop, and so I love it with Lowry. You look at him being started at the point of attack, long arms at 6'6". And I talked about him being country strong, those things. He's just a guy that is just tough to deal with along that defensive line. He's a versatile guy, can play 5-tech, can play 3-tech. I talked about that. They even dropped him into coverage on numerous occasions, and I thought he was very comfortable. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this guy had like 5 or 6 career interceptions at Northwestern. So this guy's a menace, okay? This guy disrupts and impacts the football game from a number of different ways. So, and that's my last pro for him, is he is a disruptive football player. Deflections, I've seen like 6 or 7 deflections just in 2015 alone. You got tackles for loss. I talked about him having 6 in one game. He had 13 and a half this season for Northwestern. 6 came in one game versus Nebraska, which is insane. You've got him getting to the quarterback and actually getting some sacks. He had 2 in that Nebraska game that I watched. And so they're just penetrations into the backfield. The first play, let me tell you a quick story, and then we're going to move on to his cons. First play that I turned on the tape. Okay, I'm watching him against Nebraska, the very first play, and I knew it was going to be a long day for Nebraska when I saw this. First play of the game, he's got a tight end over him, and he takes the tight end and blows him up, walks him about 4 yards back into the backfield, makes a play for a tackle for loss. I said, oh shit. That was the first thing that I said. And I'm not a guy that uses a lot of profanity, but he caught me off guard because I didn't expect that the first play of the game. And that's Dean Lowry in a nutshell. The guy is just a physical specimen at 6'6", 296. I really love his game. You go to his cons. He'll play high at times. At 6'6", you can expect that from time to time. When you get a guy that's north of 6'4" along that defensive line, sometimes the tendency, especially when you get tired, is to just stand straight up out of your stance. That allows your chest to be exposed and those offensive linemen to get up under there and kind of drive you back. In his particular case, he's a guy that you won't necessarily move back a lot, but you'll be able to stand him up and he'll be at a stalemate at the line of scrimmage, and he won't be able to get into the backfield or do anything to disrupt the football play. He needs to refine his pass rush because I see so much potential in this guy to be a havoc wreaker from the defensive line that it's not even funny. He loves to spin. He's got a great secondary spin move. So when he doesn't win initially up the field, he'll spin on you with the quickness. And so I just feel like if he can find a way to refine all of the tools that he has, because I talked about the elite quickness. He's got a quick swim move right off the snap. He's in the backfield. Okay, use that. I want to see him use the spin move. I want to see him use the bull rush. I want to see him use the rip move. I want to see him use a bevy of moves and put them together in a sequence that will allow him to be a more effective pass rusher. And I think if he gets with the right coaching staff here, and if these guys can get the most out of him, I think that's something that they'll be able to do, and he'll be able to reap the benefits of having some good coaching in Green Bay, because this guy has immense talent. And my last con isn't really a con, it's more of a question. And it's, can he give that Nebraska effort more consistently? I mean, I'm not asking for him to go out and have 6 tackles for losses and 2 sacks in one game. I mean, that's insane. I'm not asking for him to do that, but I'm looking for that type of disruptiveness on a consistent basis. Can he give that? I don't know, but I damn sure like to see him get an opportunity to do so. And so I'm in love with Dean Lowry. This is my favorite pick of this Packers draft in the 4th round, 137th pick overall. Northwestern defensive lineman Dean Lowry for me is a triple in the 4th round. I absolutely love his game, and I really think he's a hidden gem in this draft. And I think he's going to be a guy that will stand out for the Packers much sooner than later in this draft class. You go to the 5th round, 163rd pick overall. California wide receiver Trevor Davis is the selection for the Packers. A 6'1", 188-pound wide receiver. He's a blazer, folks. That's the first pro. 4'4", 240. This guy can pick him up and put him down. It's funny because when you watch the tape, he does not look like he's running that fast, but trust me, he is. And he's leaving guys in his wake. If you just watch some of his tapes, you watch him in a number of games. The Utah game sticks out, running by guys. Beautiful throw by Jared Goff in the corner of the end zone on a deep ball there. San Diego State, one of the first games of the season. I think he had like 3 catches for like 90-something yards and a big, about 45 or 55-yard touchdown run, or catch, excuse me. Blows by the corner. He gets flat-footed. Trevor Davis runs right by him. Guy doesn't even stand a chance. He could have just stopped running. I mean, Trevor Davis left that guy in his dust. So just pure speed. A couple of kickoff returns versus Washington State in 2014. Back-to-back kickoff returns for touchdowns. One for 100, another one for 98 yards on back-to-back kickoffs in a 60-59 win for Cal in 2014. So that was a wild game, and he was a huge part of that with 2 kickoff returns and 2 receiving touchdowns in that football game. So he was all over the place in that game. So this guy brings a tremendous amount of explosion and explosive playmaker as the next pro, and I just basically told you why he's an explosive playmaker, not just as a receiver, but also in the returns game, which lends me to the next pro. He's got special teams value. You know you're getting a guy that's going to be able to help you in the returns game, and I think the Packers can definitely use a guy that can help them in the returns game. I don't think they get enough out of their returns game, whether it's punt returns or kickoff returns. Ty Montgomery gave you a little something last year, then he got injured, and so I think you could use a guy like a Trevor Davis that could come in, not only stretch the field, because I didn't think we had enough speed when Jordy Nelson got hurt. Nobody was there to take the top off defenses. Everybody was packing it in against the Packers. No one was a deep threat, and so this guy's going to change that for you this year if he's able to come in and crack this roster, and I fully expect him to be able to do so because he brings a lot to the table that the Packers currently lack on their roster. Really good hands. I was surprised. I thought he's going to have sketchy hands. One of the first games I watched him in was the Utah game. It was Stanford. It was actually the Stanford game, and there was a pass that went right through his hands. I'm like, oh, he's going to be one of these guys that's really fast. Doesn't have great hands like a Ted Ginn Jr. No, not the case. This guy has really good hands and catches in traffic. There's a play in that same Stanford game where Jared Goff leads him way too far on a post route, and there's a safety over the top, there's a cornerback trailing him, and he stretches out one hand, grabs the football, takes a shot from the safety, holds on to the football with a one-hand grab. It was beautiful, and that let me know not only does he have good hands, but he can catch it in traffic. He's not afraid, because when you hear 188 pounds, you think to yourself, okay, this guy's he's a frail body boy. He's a little fragile. He's not trying to take any shots. All contraire, my friend, this guy is not afraid of contact, so he can catch it in traffic. Toughness, it takes a special type of guy to return kicks and punts and all those things, and to go over the middle, take shots from safeties. He's got some toughness to him. Don't let the 188 pounds fool you. This guy is a lot tougher than he looks. Tracks the football tremendously in the air. I love his ball tracking skills. Reminds me of the Jets' second-round pick out of Ohio State, Devin Smith, and his ability to track the football. This guy goes over the shoulder like nobody's business, catches the football. Very good ball skills when it's in the air, tracking it and going and getting it. So I like that about him as well. So those are all pros. Let's talk about his cons. Too much hesitation off the line of scrimmage. He's one of these guys, off the snap, he wants to give you a number of shakes, and it looks like he's having a seizure off the line of scrimmage. Just get into your route, buddy. You don't need 1,000 shakes. This isn't going to stop anybody from knowing what you're about to do. All it is delaying the route and really putting your quarterback in a tough position if you're the primary route on that play. So I saw that hesitation off the line, and it's just about every time he's here, he's chopping his steps, and I'm like, just take off, man, go do something. And so that's something I'd like to see him clean up at the next level. Also, how does he handle press coverage? This is less of a con, more of a question. Didn't really see him get pressed, because when the word's out, and word on the street is this guy's really fast, teams back off, players back off. They don't want to get beat deep. So he wasn't getting a lot of press coverage. How is he going to handle that at the next level? Because until you beat some guys in the NFL, they're going to try you, okay? You're the new kid on the block. I'm going to try you first. I'm going to pull your card first. You got to show me that you got that kind of speed that makes me back up and respect you. So how does he handle press coverage? We're going to see. And the last con is another one of these questions. Can he develop into an all-around wide receiver? Because at Cal, to me, he was more one of these guys that could just take the top off the defense. Sure, he had some underneath catches, but for the most part, his job was to get deep and make big plays, explosive plays. There were a lot of 3-catch, 90-yard games, 3-catch, 70-yard games. There weren't a lot of 8 catches for 67 yards or 8 catches for 92 yards. There's a lot of those 2-catch, 1-catch, 3-catch, 4-catch games in there. More like a Deshaun Jackson, where Deshaun Jackson could get you for 3 catches and 122 yards or 2 scores, but he could also get you for 3 catches and 6 yards, or 1 catch and 6 yards. You want a guy that's in the middle that can get you 6 or 7 grabs every game. Can he develop into one of those guys that can catch the underneath routes just as much as he can take the top off the defense? We'll see. I like Trevor Davis. I like this pick. I like this flyer that they take late in the draft in the 5th round. The guy with some speed that can come in and impact the game in the 5th round, 163rd pick. Trevor Davis for me is a double. I like what he brings to the table. I think this guy can develop into a really good wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. We see the Packers do this all the time. They keep a good stable of receivers, add Trevor Davis to that mix. I think he's going to fit in very well with Aaron Rodgers and company in Green Bay. You go to the final pick of the Packers draft in the 6th round, 200th overall selection, Stanford offensive lineman Kyle Murphy is the selection. 6'6", 305 pounds, long, active, old offensive lineman. He gets to the second level with urgency. That's his first pro. He's much like your second round pick in Jason Spriggs. He's a guy that can get to that second level and does a good job on double teams of pushing off that first defensive lineman and getting to that second level and getting to that linebacker or whomever is there. And so that's the next pro, is that it gets to that double team. It does a really good job on that, and that allows him to get to that second level with urgency. Played in a pro-style offense is the next pro at Stanford. And it's funny, I read an article with Kyle Long and Chance Warmack and a bunch of offensive linemen who go up and train with LaCharles Bentley at his little facility that he's put together for offensive linemen. And they talk about how they come from college offenses that don't have pro-style concepts. So when they get to the league, they struggle in making the transition from college spread offense to NFL pro-style blocking schemes. And so it seems like something that's really trivial that you just come from a school that has a pro-style offense like Stanford does, but that actually helps your transition and gives you a better shot as a 6th round pick to make a roster, because that transition is less steep for you. You come in and you understand some of the things they're asking you to do versus a guy coming from like an Oregon or somewhere like that where spread is primarily used and there's not a lot of offensive concepts and blocking concepts that they use it at the pro level. So that's something that Kyle Murphy has at his disposal and is a big advantage for him. He's coming from Stanford. He's a gritty, tough, battle-tested, physical offensive lineman in the ring. I think he's a guy that really tries hard, gives you maximum effort when he's on the field, but there are a lot of things that I don't like with Kyle Murphy. Let's jump into those cons. Struggles against pure power and elite quickness. I put on the USC game, was the first one I watched, and the first 5 plays scared me half to death because he got bull rushed on the first 3 plays, and then on the next 2 plays, the guy just ran right by him, and I'm like, wow, this is really bad. Then I watched him against UCLA, and he had a small defender in front of him, and he ate him up. He ate him alive. So it's all in who's in front of him. You put an elite athlete in front of him, he's going to struggle. You put a guy that's extremely strong in front of him, like Kyle Lowry, and he's going to embarrass him. So I have my doubts about Kyle Murphy at the next level, and I call it Kyle Dean Lowry. If you put Dean Lowry in front of him, he's going to embarrass Kyle Murphy, and so I'm worried about Kyle Murphy at the next level. On the ground, way too much is the next con. I hate when my offensive linemen are on the ground a bunch, especially when you're not cutting somebody. If you're just on the ground because you either got thrown on the ground or you lost your balance, and you can't help me on the ground. And this, I've seen plays, he actually kicked out some blocks on his knees because he got so anxious getting up the field, and he's blocking and he slips and he falls down in a haste, and he's still blocking guys on the ground. I told you this guy is tenacious, he's tough, he's physical, he tries hard, but sometimes he tries too hard and he goes too far and he's on the ground all the damn time. I'm just not a fan of being on the ground. Below average lateral agility and movement skills. This is a guy that, like I told you, he got beat to the inside a bunch. I'm just not a huge fan of his in terms of his lateral quickness, and you can't put this guy on an island. If he does make this team, it's going to be in a backup capacity. And as we know, the Packers always need offensive linemen and bodies, so we'll see if Kyle Murphy is able to crack this roster or not. I'm not a huge fan of his work, and in the 6th round, 200 overall selection, Kyle Murphy for me is a single to round out this Packers draft. So that's the Green Bay Packers 2016 draft in a nutshell. Let's quickly recap what they were able to do in this draft. You got 2 home runs to start off the draft, and Kenny Clark, defensive lineman out of UCLA in the 1st round, and Jason Spriggs, offensive tackle out of Indiana in the 2nd round. Then you get a triple out of Kyler Fackrell, linebacker out of Utah State in the 3rd round. In the 4th round, Blake Martinez, another linebacker, is a double out of Stanford. In the 4th round, my favorite pick of this entire draft, Dean Lowry, defensive lineman, 5-tech, 3-tech, out of Northwestern, is a triple. And then in the 5th round, Trevor Davis, a guy that I think is also going to be a sleeper in this draft class, is a double out of Cal. And to wrap up your draft, offensive lineman out of Stanford, Kyle Murphy is a single to wrap up your draft. So you look at these different picks and you total up the scores: 2 home runs, 2 4s, 2 triples, 2 3s, 2 doubles, 2 2s, and a single. You add it up, you get 19. Divide by the number of picks, 2.7. You get a 2.71 for the Green Bay Packers 2016 NFL Draft. It's a really good draft. Kyle Murphy jacked it up with his single at the end that kept the Packers from getting any bonuses in this draft. But that's the Packers draft, and that is the 2016 NFL Draft wrap-up of the Green Bay Packers. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab. Come back and join me as I continue to break down everything. And next is the National Football League. Who's next? Bart Scott. Can't wait.
There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie T, be sure to follow me on Twitter at In The Lab Room, or you can like the Facebook page at In The Lab Room. That's In The Lab Room on Facebook and at In The Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.